Yes, I was the first engineer hired. I was the second employee. The first employee hired at New Relic is standing outside that door. Her name is May, and she's showing people into the other hacker lounge. So I'm going to plug in here. I'm going to be giving a live demo here, and it's going to be all crazy, and I'm going to be distracting everything. So your job, Tori, is to tell me when I have like 2 minutes left, because I have a ton of stuff. I'm not going to get through it all. What am I going to do? Oh, there's May right there. Hey, stand up, May. There's New Relic employee number one. So I'm going to present a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to get through it all, but I'm going to pick it up again in the hacker lounge. So we'll pick it up from there. And yes, it's true that I was the first engineer, but I think I'm probably more proud of being featured on the New Relic 404 page. If you've ever hit a 404 page, there's a video of me giving a technical presentation. I think my pose is something like this, as I'm being pranked with pink ponies in the middle of my presentation. So hopefully this will go a lot better than that. What I'm going to talk about is basically give you a little bit of an overview of R. I mean, if you're at New Relic, you're probably a data geek, as many of us are. And if you probably love the stuff that Lou demoed this morning with Insights, some really amazing visualization and stuff. But if you're a true data geek, you probably just want to get the data yourself and go around and roll around in the dirt with it. So I'm curious in this room, how many people have used R? Anybody? How many people know what R is when I'm talking about R? Okay, so maybe about half of you. R is basically a statistical analysis package. It's a programming language, but it's mostly used for statistical analysis, and it's got amazing tools for graphics, statistics, data science, prediction, all kinds of things. And what I'm hoping to do in this session is just kind of show you some of the stuff you can do. I can't possibly get through and show you, like, how to program in R, or even introduce the language, but I am going to try to inspire you to maybe go out and find it yourself. So the basic ingredients for my presentation are the R environment and the Insights REST API. I'm going to get data directly out of Insights into R, and the Insights, or NRDB, REST API is pretty straightforward. It's a simple GET request. You pass in a NURCL expression, and you get back the results in JSON. The R environment is pretty straightforward. It's mostly an interactive console, although most people use popular IDE called RStudio, which is this really awesome IDE for that has all of the help and the plotting and just all kinds of tools built into one. It's a really nice and pretty fun environment to use. So I'm not going to go over the R basics. You're going to see a lot of R code, and it can be pretty hard to digest. It's a little strange looking. The syntax is a little odd. It's got little nuances like the assignment operator is a left arrow, not an equal sign, and things like that. But the basic idea is it allows you to kind of store data, structured data, as vectors and lists and matrices, and it makes it real simple to do operations across those things. So as an example, one of the libraries we're going to use is HTTR library, which is for making HTTP requests. And this is what a call would look like to make a REST call on the NRDB and get the content back as a JSON payload, and then to return that content translated into a native R list. In fact, the helper function that I wrote to get the data is a little bit more involved. It looks at the actual content return. The content that's returned from that HTTP call is this JSON structure that's pretty complicated. It's got nested elements and all sorts of peripheral information. It's not just like a CSV download or anything. So one of the things I have to do is kind of look at the content, figure out what it is, and transform it into something that's called a data frame. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I've got this helper thing called an API that I'm going to create, making this call to Insights. And then I'm just going to execute some NURCL on that and see what it looks like. And this is basically live. If I have an internet connection, we're going to find out. And so it's a little small. Let me see if I can make that bigger. So there, I executed a query, and it pulled back a timestamp and a name from a bunch of page views. So the NURCL, if you're not familiar with NURCL, it's basically a query-like expression, SQL-like expression to just sort of select your data and do some primitive analysis on it. But in this expression, I'm getting the name and the duration from the page view events. And the page view events are basically the things that you've been seeing a lot today. Lots of the demos are all based around the information that you have with page views, which are events. And so, the actual results of this, we're looking at a data frame here, and a data frame, again, is like it's a key element for analysis. And you can think of it basically like a relational table. You've got columns that are called variables, and then you've got rows that are referred to as observations. So that's what we're going to be doing some analysis on. So one of the things I'm going to do is basically take those page views and turn them into a data frame of session data. I want to capture all the information around a session. I want to have every row basically be a page view, so I can see, do some interesting stuff with that. And so the way I'm going to do that is I first have to go and get a list of session IDs. I'm going to execute some NURCL to get my session IDs, and then I'm going to iterate through those session IDs. And for each one, I'm going to get all of the page views during that session. And then I'm going to gather those up. I'm going to have all these different sessions, and then I'm going to gather them up into a single, re-aggregate them into a single data frame. And so here's the code that looked at. I wrote some helpers to sort of do that are pretty much along the lines of what I showed earlier. So that first request is going to get the session IDs. Actually, I'll just do that one to start with. Get the session IDs, and these are getting the session IDs for an account called justgive.org, friends of mine who kindly donated their data for me. So these are getting the actual data off their account. So I just did this query. You can see the NURCL query that I did, and the session IDs I got back look like this. There's about 25 of them. And so the next thing I want to do is get the actual sessions, download each individual sessions for those IDs, and I'm going to do that. Woo, hello, all right. With this query. And this is actually executing a separate request for each session. One of the limitations of the new Relic API is that you can only get 1,000 things at a time, 1,000 rows at a time. So if there's any chance that you're going to ask it for data that's more than 1,000 rows, you might get truncated. And so I work around that by just getting session at a time, session by session in a loop. And it doesn't take that long. So I've got, let's see, what did we come back with? I have my sessions list. I've got 20 sessions in that sessions list. The first one, I can index into the list with that syntax, and I can look at, say, the names, in other words, the transactions in that first session. So that's the first, those are all the pages in the first session that I've got. What I want to do next is recombine all of those individual sessions into one giant table. So the way I do that is with a command called rbindfill, and take all the sessions. And now everything should be in this giant list. And if I did, let's see, get a sort of a view of the kind of the top of that data. This is like the first 10 rows. You can see I've got city, session. I've got some various measurements there that I've collected, and then I've got a whole bunch of variables I didn't even have a chance to see. But I've basically got all of them in a table now, and the columns in that table I can get access with names. So I'm going to look at the names of pages, and that's the list of everything I've got there. You know, and these actually are the same attributes that you will see in our Data Explorer, which Lou introduced this morning. You can see in the bottom of that page, sample page view events. Here's all those attributes that we were just looking at. So we just pulled down all these attributes from these page views into an R console, and we're ready to go to town. And so, let's see. Yeah, so we can go back and do some basic analysis on this. So let's say we want to look at all the unique pages, that are part of this. So there I've got 26 different pages that are part of this data set. Let's see, I want to look at the mean of the duration. Right, so what's the average response time for all of the pages in there? 3.3, yeah, okay, and then the median, 3.0. Probably what I'd rather look at is a little more helpful information from summary, which is going to show me now for all of the page durations what the inner and outer quartiles are, the min, the max, the mean, and the median, sort of some summary information. Summary is an example of polymorphism in R. You can invoke summary on just about anything, and it'll be implemented to give you kind of useful information about that. So that's pretty cool with the duration, but maybe what I want to look at is a breakdown of the web browsers that people are using. So I'm going to create a table of pages, user agent name, and okay, we've got 4 different browsers that people were using in this list of sessions. Let's also look at the states under region code, where all of these came from. So there were a bunch of different states there. I could look at the use of the browsers in each of those states. So, you know, there's how the browser breaks down in each of those states. Not super exciting. And of course, with Insights, you get all of this information through fasting and amazing graphs and all kinds of things that we saw this morning. But this is what we're getting in here. We're opening up the tools to R for us to do a lot more statistical, interesting things. So another one I could do is just do a quick plot of a breakdown of pages by name. So, here. That's the chart I just generated. So this is a plot just showing a histogram of page counts by name. Of course, you can't really read those pages too well, so I'm going to come back here and flip that around. And see how that looks now. That's a little better. So you can see the pages on the left there, and you can see the page counts on the right. What might be cool is to actually look at the duration. Instead of looking at the page counts, let's look at the duration. There's the page loads for each of those different pages. Equals pages. And again, you guys promised me there were no R programmers in here too who are laughing at me, right? I mean, actually, if you were an R programmer, you'd be very impressed with my skills here. So let's see if that's better. Okay, so this is a little odd. So it's what we're actually looking at is the every individual page across our data set is being plotted here in terms of its duration, and it's grouped by the different pages. And that's kind of cool, sort of informative, but you know, probably what we really want to get at is not so much the individual stuff, but the actual summary information. So I'm going to create a box plot here, a box and whiskers plot. So this is the same data, but now we're actually looking at kind of the box plots. So those are plots that show the median value and the inner and outer quartiles and the 95th percent confidence interval, and then they throw in a couple of outliers there are the dots. And so you're looking at different page response profiles for the different pages. You could do the same thing and look at, let's see, the user agent name. See what that looks like. So there's a breakdown of the web browsers. You know, they're all fairly close. And so let's see. Yeah, that's some of the kind of summary stuff you can do to explore the data. Let's see, coming back to, blow that up a little bit. Next thing I want to show you, let's see, how are we doing on time? 5 minutes. Is that my 5-minute warning right now? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to show you, get through some network graphs. What I want to do is take that data, look at the transitions from page to page, and draw a network graph showing just a session, a directed graph of the pages through a session. I'm going to use a library called iGraph, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to pick a random session. This is a little code that will pick a random session from my list of sessions that has more than 10 pages, more than 5 pages and more than 10 visits. Come back to my console. There's my session. Let's see, here's all the pages in the session. For this particular session, oh wow, somebody from Tokyo, interesting. What I need to do is first build a list of the page transitions, which I'm going to do with this function. And that basically iterates through the list and builds sort of the from and the to for each individual page view. And I'm going to call that edges. So I'm going to say get me edges by get transitions from that session. And then the next thing I need to do is look at nodes, which are going to be the nodes of the plot. So I'm going to go through all of the pages, but I don't want duplicates, so I'm going to group them by name, and then I'm going to add an attribute, which is the count of the number of times that any particular page was hit. So there's my nodes. I got edges and nodes, and then the last thing I need to do is create the graph object using this helper function called graph data frame, and it's a directed graph. And then I've got my graph object, so now I'm just going to plot it. And there it is. So that's a flow. You're sent page to page. Kind of hard to read, a little messy, so I'm going to come back and kind of clean that up a little bit. I can set attributes on that graph now that I've created it, fix up kind of some of the text and some other attributes. And wrong one, this one. And so it looks a little bit better. And then the last thing I'm going to do is show that graph, but I'm going to add in some attributes for the page response time and the number of visits. And that's going to, I'm going to create a helper, a scale function here to scale some of those values. I'm going to set the size of the nodes according to the count of visits. I'm going to set the color of the arrows according to how long it took to display that page using a scaled palette. I wish I had more time to tell you how this stuff works. It's really cool. But I'm just going to paste that in there, and then I'm going to do the graph again. And now it looks a little different. You can see I've got some attributes. That top right thing, I don't know if you can see it. It's bright red, meaning that was kind of our slowest page. And then those 2 in the bottom are kind of the ones with the most hit. And then the last thing I can do is try a different layout. I'm going to do a circle layout, so I can look at this session with I keep going to the wrong page. Look at the, so those are actually laid out in a circle. You can lay them out as a grid. There's about 25 different layout algorithms that it'll use to lay out the graph. And it's pretty cool. So at any rate, those are just a couple of things. I'm pretty much out of time. But there were some other things that you can do, really cool stuff you can do to analyze your distribution of response times, plot histograms, density plots, do a lot of different analysis. You can generate maps really easily using the data, global maps or US maps, state by state. Maps like this generated with the map library. I've got some sample code of that. So if you think you'd be interested in kind of looking at some of this too, I'll be in the Hacker Lounge. Come by. If you, we can use your API key, download the data from your own Insights account and play around with it and see what it looks like if you're curious. And that's it. So just scratching the surface of what you can do with R. Barely even showed anything that was all that amazing. But there's all kinds of statistical tools, machine learning tools and the main thing is they're all as accessible as what I did just now. It's really easy stuff. R is kind of everything's in the libraries, and it's usually just a few lines of code to do just amazing things. So once you learn R, you'll never use Excel again. D3 charts, you can generate charts with D3. You can have web apps that do R, where R is running in a web app to generate pages that have any interesting stuff. All of this info can be found on my GitHub repo, Kayser, and there's some other references here that you'll find on that page. I want to thank justgive.org for donating their data. And that's it. Thanks very much. Hopefully I'll see you in the Hacker Lounge.